Getting attacked by my mask. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I apologize for the mix-up on timing. We published the meeting to be held at 6, but we told the county apparently it'd be at 7, as we have in prior years. So what we'll use this meeting for is because it was published, there's people that have dialed in. We'll use that time to ask them to share their concerns, questions. We'll try to answer those, but we won't be taking any action at this meeting. That'll be deferred to the appointed time during our regular council meeting. So just as a recap for everyone, if I could get you to go to document viewer, TJ. All of you have the same thing here, and I'll make this bigger so you can all see it. So for those of you keeping score, this will be our 8th discussion on the budget formally. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to take public comment and answer questions. It's not for me to go back through the detailed budget and present it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the public for comments, and we'll try to answer any question. If questions we don't get answered here, if we need to go back and look up some detail, we'll have an opportunity to do that at the end. All right?
So we just open it up to the public, either here or on Zoom. Anybody out there in Radio Land have anything? Now what do we do? Do you? Okay.
This was emailed in. This is an email from Tom Swenson, Crest Lake resident. Recommendations following review of the December 14th, 2020 information meeting handout. 1, on page 23, it shows $120,000 was budgeted, levied, and collected in 2020 for joint maintenance facility expenses. It also shows $56,500 is now being budgeted in 2021 for items that have already been collected to pay for. The $56,500 should be removed from the 2021 budget, and a motion made to place $56,500 in a reserve account for future joint maintenance facility expenses. 2, on page 41, it shows $5,000 under Parks and Rec for legal fees. Based on what was spent in 2019 and 2020, this account can be reduced by $4,000. My hope is that the City Council would act on the above stated recommendations and thereby reduce the proposed 2020 tax levy collectible in 2021 by $60,500. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, any comments toward that?
Let me first address the $56,500, the person identified. Remember when that question was asked at our meeting on the 19th and again on the 14th, we addressed it at the beginning of the meeting on the 14th. I also showed the council that if you go to page 23 of your budget packet, which I'll put up here. This is the $56,500 the person is questioning. That number is included in capital outlay for next year. It is not levied for again next year. It's included in amounts that are carried over into 2021. So we're not levying twice for it. There's a couple other things in there too. There's what's left of Wildwind Ranch Road, and then a couple other minor projects. The total dollars levied in 2020 that we received in 2020 for projects we did not complete in 2020 was about $164,000. And the way I've reflected that in the budget, so we get credit for it and we don't levy for it twice, is to show over on page 13, right here, that we did not include it in the levy. We took it out because we already have the cash sitting in the bank, most of the cash, about 98% of it, because not everybody pays their taxes.
What projects were those, Mike?
One was Wild Wind Ranch.
And that was that 110, if I remember?
It was $117,000 the first time we put a pencil to it. We delayed that project and moved it into 2021. And on page 25, a little hard to read in blue, but that number is $98,430. The $98,430, the $56,500, and then there was $9,325 for some irrigation work at the park that we didn't get done this fall because it just delays. If you add all of those up, that totals the number on, I spoke to earlier, on page 13. It totals this number. So we've already got the cash, or most of it, and we're not levying for it twice. Okay? To the other question on, I don't have a copy of that in front of me. Sure. No, the comments you read.
That was the other one.
Yeah.
Legal fees in Park and Rec.
Sure. I mean, that's really up to you if you want to do that. $4,000 really isn't going to make a whole bit of
So the
difference.
last couple of years, the Park and Rec has spent about $1,000 in legal fees?
Maybe. What we do sometimes is we allocate legal fees for representing their union during negotiations. So we allowed for some money to do that. If you want to take it out, it'll just get paid for by the general fund when we do that this fall.
So where would that money go, just out of curiosity, if we left 5 in there and we didn't use it? Does that just carry over to the general fund?
The way we handle the park and the library is we look at, I mean, the park doesn't support itself financially, neither does the library. And so what we do is we look at all the revenues and expenses in there, and we just continue to roll the balance over and assign it to next year.
But aren't we getting into union negotiations and stuff this calendar, or 2021?
If we negotiate in 2021, yeah. We're scheduled to, but sometimes those don't go as planned. The timing is such. We could start, usually the unions will give us an intent to negotiate, and then they fire the first shot across the bow. And then we sit down with our labor attorney and in the negotiating committee and say, all right, what do you think about the first shot? How would you like to respond? We respond, and then based on that response, we either get negotiating real quick or we don't. I really can't say at this time.
So what you're saying is there's a potential that could be needed?
Absolutely.
Okay, that answered my question.
I have a question.
Sure.
On that statement with assigned fund balances, the part where you have items levied in 2019 carried over to 2020, those are not assigned for those particular projects, or
Yes,
what
they
is the
were.
status? You have items levied in 2019 carried over into 2020. Some of those haven't been expended this year either. Are they going to be carried over into the next year? Are we assigning those for, like the floor drains, 50,000, card access, 20,000, Perkins Road, Wildwood Ranch, and Manhattan? You have fund balances in all those.
Sure, you're looking at the email that I'd sent out to everybody?
I'm looking at your assigned, I had requested those assigned balances so that we knew what was assigned, what was sitting there.
Sure, so you're looking at the email that I'd sent you earlier. It's not not in the documents I have, so hang on a second.
Well, I think you might have, do you have it in this budget?
What page?
I believe I do. I'm going to pull out,
Let's see if I can find it. I thought I saw it in here after I got it.
if I don't, I'll have to borrow your copy. Oh, I believe it'd be number 7 under the consent calendar, if I'm thinking of the same thing. Yeah,
So those items have not been designated or signed. They're just ones that have been held over from the 2019 budget into the 2020, and now we're going from the 2020 into the 2021.
sure. So let's
$460,000.
let's back up a second. When we look at the Public Works Manhattan Loon Lake Stormwater, that's been completed. Wildwind Ranch, we did spend some money in 2020. The difference that we didn't spend from that is the $98,000. We had some engineering, some legal, some just prep work getting ready for the project that we didn't do. So these numbers were what those balances were at the end of 2019. All of these have been updated. So in my email response to everybody, which I don't have in front of me, I addressed each one of those items. And so,
But what I'm wondering is, what's gonna happen to the balances now? Are these actually assigned to these projects, or are they just carried over from the budget?
those were assigned to those projects to be performed in 2020. The balance that has not been completed or assigned to something else is what we carried over to 2021, represented by the 164,255.
So the current balances from these levied projects are going into 2021?
Correct.
Okay.
And that number today is represented on page 13 of your budget packet. And that's represented by the 164,255. That's what's left of those. You know, we did spend some money on those projects during the year, and we did, as a council, make decisions to do other things with some of those funds. So the goal of updating that was to reflect those decisions. And again, if you go to page 13 of the budget,
Okay, so I have another question. For some reason, I can't quite get a handle on this sewer capital outlay, and I know Public Works has been discussing their capital outlay projects, and I'm not.
I can talk a little bit.
sure.
Turn on your mic. Okay.
In light of what you're talking about, in 2019, we levied $100,000 for lift stations. Right, and that's sitting in the bank. It's just in our, what do you want to call our bank?
Well, we budgeted for those expenditures with the intent of transferring the money from the general fund to the Public Works fund to do that.
If it's sitting there, it should be assigned. If it's for
Well,
lift stations,
there-
it should be assigned.
That's yes or no. You know, that, it's keeping track of what we've
But
What we've
how-
collected money for, I think, is what you, let me keep going here. So that was in 2019. So you got to look back, which is, and then in 2020, we had another 50,000 in there. And if you look at the budget in 2021, we have 50 more in there for lift stations. But at the Public Works meeting, there was quite a discussion and priorities were assigned with Ted's help. And we decided that the clarifiers are the number one thing on the list to get them fixed, because if you need 2 in the summer, right now we only need 1, and they're both aging. And the good news is Ted took them down on 12/2. You probably all saw the pictures. It's my understanding we bought turnbuckles that needed to be replaced. We don't have to do roof work, and it's kind of like we need to just buy new parts to replace the ones that are in the original design. So anyways, what I've told you so far, that was 200,000. In 2021, we have $200,000 for clarifiers. So Ted's goal, hopefully, is to do all of that for the 400 he has here. That's the way I read if you keep track of the numbers, and you call it assigned, but those funds were pulled out of the taxes to be used for that thing.
For the sewer.
But it all goes in the bank, you know, if you
Yeah.
really want to get,
No, I understand that, but
yeah.
it was designated to be for sewer projects.
right,
And that's what you're doing with the clarifiers.
right.
Okay.
And the best thing we could do is, if there's a project, or if there's a number on a budget for a task to get done, let's get on with it and get it done, then we don't have to keep track of it.
Does it look like
That's the
200
big
will
deal.
do one of them?
Pardon?
Does it look like 200 will do one of the clarifiers?
All I know is we got turnbuckles. If we spend over,
Ted
if we
raises his
spend
hand.
over
so-
50
so
grand
he's-
on both of them, I'll be surprised.
Oh, wow. I'd
But
be
we are
elated.
collecting 200 new money this year for it, and we've got 200 carryover money.
No, 50 new this year, and we have 150 carryover. Did I understand you right, Dave?
Well, what Public Works talked about was the big group of money.
Yeah.
Clarifiers, and we're going to use it to do clarifiers first, and then we're going to use what's left into the lift stations. But the discussion we had was before Ted took them down, and now he found out, I think it's good news. I'm just trying to squeak a number out of him here, that's why. So,
Right now, after we took them down, the engineer's working with a couple of different manufacturers of the materials that are worn out. The good news is the concrete was fine. The main mechanism that drives this is fine. It's a central gear and motor and 2 9-foot arms that turn, and they scrape the sludge off the bottom of the tank too, and then that's put back through the plant. The majority of everything there is in good shape. The things that are worn were those turnbuckles. There's a baffle wall, aluminum baffle wall that goes from the top to the bottom of the tank. It's about 11 foot tall. You can put your finger through that baffle wall. Aluminum's just corroded away. There's steel trough, launder trough, where the water goes into. That's got to be replaced. The skimmer on it is held together with basically tape right now. We got that 3M, or that, that's the sticky stuff you see they put on the bottom of the boats. That's what's holding this one piece together right now. That's the things that are, so it's bits and pieces. We will have a number very soon for you. I'm anticipating that it's going to be less than $200,000.
So with the budgeted $50,000 for the 2021 budget, and the carryover of the other 150, we've got 200. Okay.
And then there's another 200 that's over there in the lift stations. And whether we need that or not, I don't know yet. And that's what is to be determined by the engineers yet. So
so said another way, we have $400,000 to do lift stations, which are estimated at 350, and now he's saying 200 for the clarifiers. So we aren't going to get them all done. You're going to only get part of them. If you want to get them done, we got to dig into the bank again, and we've been digging into the bank right and left lately. The phone company money, if you remember, we did the sewer plant upgrade. We said $1.5 million we're going to use. The electrical estimate came in way over, and I think we used 2.3 million in that range.
Yeah, we ended up issuing a bond for about $1 million to do the balance of it.
Right. And now we are spending, between all the decisions we made, we got to dig into it another 2.4 million, less the 1.4 that we, so it's $1 million more for the fire hall. Are you going to talk to the details of that?
Sure.
But, and I talked to Mike earlier today and asked him about the balance, and the balance is going to be less than $2 million. So seems like the big construction projects are the ones that are eating our lunch.
Yep.
So TJ, can you put us back on here? Thank you. So one of the ways I look at this is, every year we look at how much money are we going to spend? How much cash do we need to generate? And this is on page 13, and I'm just going to make this smaller for just a second. So what I do is I'm looking at this column here with my finger on it. I'm saying in the sewer operating fund, which is where we're doing all these things, we don't have levy as a revenue in there. And so when you say, yeah, we levied for it, well, we did, but we also saved cash from all our previous year's levies, because we're looking at $331,200 of revenue, and we have $868,786 of expenses. That's a problem. We need to fund that. But what's in that expense side? We know we're going to have $315,000 of depreciation. And we don't write out a check for depreciation. We're just recognizing how much of our plant we already paid for is being used, how much it's deteriorating. That means to make this expenditure model work, I need $222,586. It's got to come from somewhere. And the way the city's traditionally handled it is transferred the money, the funds they've needed for those projects, if they do them, from the general fund. Then we go into the next year, and if we needed to transfer $300,000 in there to make the fund whole, we did that. If it was zero, we didn't transfer anything. We threw it back into the kitty, rebudgeted it again, and said, how much do we need to make this thing whole? I get the concept of assigning things, and I agree you should plan for those. But the discussion we just had on the improvements in that fund changed. So what I would recommend we do is, once we know what that number is, that's the number we set aside and plan on transferring it, because you don't have any cash in your utility fund right now to pay for projects. The balance is right now at the end of November, there's about $50,000 in there. And the reason there's money in there is because, remember, we collected substantial connection charges. It isn't that we earned money or we levied it in there. We just got connection charges, that's it. Aaron, you have a question?
No.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to get at is that we have 150,000 previously levied for these projects. Now we have another 250. But unless you go back in the budgets and find it, this 150,000 should be on the assigned balance sheet, so not just one
That's a
person.
break from what the city has traditionally done. What they've done is they've only transferred the funds they needed for known projects to that fund. If they would have made a motion to do that in prior years, it'd be in there, but that wasn't done. Budgets lapse at year end and they were reappropriated in the next year. That's a change in policy.
So you never transferred any money in last year?
No, the council only transferred the balance they needed to make the fund whole. I mean, remember we were looking at a 1.3, $1.6 million project, we didn't do that either. So you wouldn't take your local portion and transfer it over there when you were transferring money over there just to make operations to zero. So we went and reappropriated it, now we have a new budget. So to say there's hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the general fund, we planned to transfer whatever we had left for current year levy plus accumulated funds, but we didn't have a project to do to pay for, so it wasn't transferred. So you can call it all previous year's levies, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact of the matter is we didn't do the projects and there was no reason to transfer the money to that fund.
The money's not gone.
It's not gone.
It's like if we're at home and Dave's doing a remodeling project for us, and we figure it's gonna be $1 million, and then we do all these, and we have $1 million in our bank, and we cut it all up into the plumbing, the heating, and all of a sudden the plumbing goes more. The only way we would do it is we'd have to take a loan. Right? And what we're doing here is, if we run over on all these projects, we're very fortunate that we have some cash. We can go into that bank balance and take it. So you're paying for some of it with money you levied, because you said it'd be 50 grand. Well, now it's 60. If everything's apples to apples, you're gonna have to go into our cash and take more out, just to deplete it. We're real lucky that we have money in there and not zero. Otherwise, we'd be
borrowing.
I don't,
Right,
the only
yeah.
place, and I get tripped up on this, every part of it, but identifying it and knowing where it's at, instead of taking a segment and just putting it in a general fund, what's called a general fund, to me, for me to try to track that and follow it, know that it's there, it's difficult.
Yeah, this is just a summary of how we're gonna spend all that. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for just a second. We'll go back to this item that's in the council packet for tonight. And remember back at our budget meetings, we made so many changes and so many things we said we were going to do that we didn't do, and then we said we're going to do this, but we're not going to do that. We're going to trade this item for that one, specific to public works. So I just said, okay, stop. Let's not try to get confused here. Think of it as a forest. If you're looking at one tree in the forest and trying to make it perfect, don't forget the whole forest around that tree might be burning down. We still need to think about that. And so if you apply that approach to our budget, I said, let's look at the whole forest called Public Works and look at what we budgeted for Public Works for 2020. That amount was $1,766,280. So we've got all this money, all these projects we're going to do. How are we going to pay for them? We're going to carry over money from 2019 pushed into 2020 for items we didn't do. Doesn't matter what those were, it's projects we didn't do. And then we said, we're going to issue some bonds for projects to take care of Big Pine Trail, some overlays, a whole bunch of other things. That means our current year levy was $207,820 that we levied for public works projects. All right, so they balance. So then we said, let's start with the budget again. Let's get rid of the debt financing. So we've got $668,300 for 2020, which is made up of $460,480 and $207,820 cash and levy. And then we said, we're still going to buy the pickup truck, which we haven't paid for yet. We're still going to pull the plow truck in from 2021, which we have to pay for yet. We have 2 bogeys out here. One's called Perkins Road and the stormwater pond for land acquisitions. We're still working through the court system on. We're not sure what those numbers are yet. We received some money from Crow Wing County for the stormwater pond, $50,000 to reimburse ourselves. We received $420,000 from Soil and Water Conservation to reimburse ourselves because we ran the project, the city ran the project. We're still working on another $20,000 for a salt management system for the new truck. Don't know if we'll have that resolved before this year end or not. We've received cash from special assessments for Perkins Road, for $192,000. We have $51,000 left to receive on that. We were just notified, we did an assessment search on one of them, so we're getting some more money back, which is kind of disappointing. I was hoping we could get 4% on that money over the next few years. So right now, on our current budget, we overspent $249,043.48. That's where it sits as of the end of November. That's what we talked about at our last two meetings.
Mike, let me interrupt you with one question. If you go up to the top of that page, you got Perkins Road and you've got 172,000. Is that sitting there?
A lot further up, Mike, I think.
I think further up, yeah.
That's 170,
To 180.
that's what we had budgeted originally for it. That's what we carried over from 2019 into 2020 to pay for that road.
But is that still being carried over? 'Cause, you
No,
know,
it's not. We spent it.
Okay, and then the 50,000 for this Loon Lake stormwater, that's not carrying over. That's gone.
That's gone.
Okay.
That was money we spent for the project, and then we turned around and sent a bill to the county. That was the cost share agreement we negotiated with Crow Wing County. They were very interested in partnering with us on that project, and we needed the county as a partner to help us facilitate the funding through soil and water conservation. That's why we did it that way. So we handled it as the primary, but the county basically sponsored us on that project. So we billed them we floated it. Think of, borrowing your kids' money, and then when they get money back, they reimburse you for their car. That's what we did. We floated the project because we had the ability to do it. We did not issue bonds for it. When the project was done, we met the requirements of both grant arrangements, and they signed off and said, yep, we're done.
So Perkins Road specific cost the city 172, is that?
No, it cost us quite a bit more than that. I can get you numbers on that later. Perkins Road cost us quite a bit more. In fact, you can see some of the cost data for that on, we actually spent about that amount trying to figure out what to do with the road over the past few years. If I go back and look at Perkins Road specifically, reconstruction on Perkins Road in 2020 was about $615,000. That's on the top of page 25 of your budget packet.
But we were reimbursed some of that money. The city didn't pay 615.
No, we assessed about $243,000 of Perkins Road, of which we'll receive all of that. We've got about $35,000, I believe, left to receive at this point. We came out really good on that, if you look at the big picture. So the point is, we spent more money on our capital projects during the year than we thought we would for a number of reasons. We made changes on what we were going to purchase and when. And where I'm going with this is when we look at the budget, this is money we spent that we didn't intend to. And we're saying, we have money in our pocket now from phone company money, from previous year's levy, whatever. We took it out and we
Used it.
used it. When we look at our budget, one thing we need to make sure we understand, and maybe the best way I can show you is I was playing with numbers before the meeting tonight. If I look at some project costs, let's look at this building, for example. And I'm just looking at what did we write checks for to pay vendors for whatever purpose, whether it's sound deadening, microphones, signs on the back wall, construction, concrete, whatever. We spent $1,575,000 in 2019. We had some bond issuance costs, because remember, we issued a bond for it. Cost money to do that. We spent $34,000 on bond issuance costs. We spent $2,224,431 to date this year. And I'm just going to check myself. That same number, that $2,224,431, is on page 20 of your budget packet. Right here. Under the city fire hall project. We had budgeted $2 million. We've spent $224,431 through October on that specific item. We still have an open bill for $41,064 on that, and we're holding that one back so we can fix things like the lovely wall over here and a few other things. If I pick up, reflect what we had for net cash from the bond sale, just under 3.7, that means we were this much short on this project so far. Add to that $249,043 we just spoke of for the Public Works Department. Add to that the changes identified to date that are still kind of floating for the city hall, because remember, we budgeted $1.4 million. We're closer to something higher than that, and I'm picking up.
Are you talking about the fire hall?
Excuse me, the fire hall, and I'm picking up things like the lockers, the equipment, everything we plan to spend that we've identified to make that building functional. It's closer to $2 million than 1.4. Now, will it be 1.8? Will it be 1.9? Will it be 2.1? You know, as soon as we get updated change orders, we'll update that number. We do have a couple that will be coming up tonight for council approval. This number should go down about $5,000. We had an issue with one of the plow trucks. Looks like the torque converter blew out on it. Ted's awake? Okay. That's probably the high end to get it fixed. It's probably still worth getting fixed. Ted will talk about that tonight. That just came up today. So we have the two land settlements we're talking about. That's $1 million we're going to spend that we hadn't planned when we started this.
Yeah, the unfortunate part of the City Hall project here is that we didn't have good numbers on the contract. They had a lot of things that were left out. We could have bonded for that and not taken so much out of the reserves.
That's correct. We could have bonded for more.
Yes.
You know, think of it as buying a car. When you go to pick it up, you can't drive it away because it's got 3 tires on it. So you got to buy a tire. Those were things that, you know, at some point, you know, call it a conference table, call it sound panels, whatever you want, things to make the building functional. So at some point, you have to recognize what it actually costs.
Well, there's a big one, land acquisition was a big one that we decided to do too on that.
Yeah, we spent city spent $508,000 between land and building this road and sewer out here. Now, we'll get a little bit of that back, but not much.
I think the land was over 200, right?
It was $172,000, including legal.
That wasn't part of our
Yeah.
initial budget.
Yep, that wasn't part of it. Neither was the road project.
Okay, so I have another question about page 13, your $222,586 transferred from the general fund in order to, that transfer has to be made in order to do that $250,000 capital project? That's your summary page on page
Yeah,
13.
I got it up on the screen here. To make this budget net to zero, we need 225, if everything happens up to this point, that's how much money we need to transfer to make it whole. Whether it's for payroll, whether it's for fixing stuff, whether it's for fixing a $12,000 pump we have yet to get the bill for.
Oh, are you talking about anything over the 868? Is that what you're saying? I didn't see where you pointed.
No, what I'm saying is, we're only gonna generate 331.
Yeah,
We're gonna spend 868. We know 315 of it is depreciation. We need 222,586 to get us to zero. So if everything happens in here exactly as it says, I'll be coming back to this group a year from now and saying, you know, you folks did a perfect job budgeting. Everything happened as planned. We didn't have any pandemics. We didn't have anything break. Everything was perfect. We'll transfer 220. I'll come and say, I need 222,586 to make that zero. And then I'll ask you, are there any other projects you'd like to do that you want to set money aside for?
We'll say no.
so are you saying that if the city council did not transfer, like last year, that $150,000, if you didn't transfer it from the general fund into the sewer fund, that was never ever levied for?
It's just the accumulated cash balances.
Okay, so you're
Of
taking
levy.
it out of reserves then?
Yep, or a current year levy, whichever the case is. So let's finish up this discussion first. So where I'm going with this is we're looking at 2.4 million of not bond proceeds that we're spending. That's my current projection. If we look at how much cash we have, we started with $11.9 million at the beginning of the year. Now remember, we had unspent bond proceeds in there. About half of that money is made up of unspent bond proceeds and money we had left over from the phone company. Fast forward to the end of the year. Let's look at the sewer operating fund in particular, which is this line. We started out with zero because we didn't have any money in there. I think we transferred a little bit to make it up to zero. Right now, I expect that $50,884.97 to be substantially less than that because we've got some pretty expensive repairs that we haven't paid for yet. We should be seeing some bills on that soon. At least 2/3 of that will go away before year end. And that's just this month. So I don't know what that number is going to be. The point I'm trying to make is the decrease in cash is going to be almost mirror the not bond proceeds for overages we spent on there. It's almost a 1-for-1. It's going to be close depending on the timing of payables, but it'll be pretty close. The good news is we got our tax settlement and everyone's paying their taxes. We have very, very little delinquent taxes, very few. So we're really fortunate in that respect. Other questions?
Should we double check that there's no one in the public that wants to?
Yeah. Is there anyone listening in that would like to ask a question? See, we have 3 people online.
And then we're also going to need time to switch the videos.
Yep. And then we'll need a couple minutes to switch the videos for our regular meeting. Okay? So we need about 10 minutes to do that.
So the other thing is that irrigation system, that 8,500 that was budgeted for this year, there's another 10,000 in there in 2021. Is there a reason for more irrigation?
That was to replace pumps, replace pumps and replace the sprinkler heads itself. They're getting pretty worn out. Rather than just piecing it together here and there, we're looking at replacing a good portion of the sprinkler heads at once. So we're gonna use that, money that is pushed over to 2021 that was projected for this year. That's a system that we're putting in. Then the 10,000 is to replace the pumps and replace the actual sprinkler heads itself.
Okay. I was just hoping it
Yep.
wasn't that irrigation system again,
Nope.
so, okay.
I move to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second it.
Second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.